Well, joining us on set is Chief Marketing Officer for KFC South Africa, Nikki Lawson, and our guest host, Theo Ferreira. Welcome, Theo. Welcome, Nikki. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to start with you, Theo. In terms of the creativity behind that, do you think it worked? Was it cheap?
It's quite a difficult question to answer, to be honest. I have my own subjective opinions about it. But
I want your subjective opinion.
yeah, I personally don't think it did much for the brand, to be honest. And you even heard the results in the commentary over the spot. I think it was a pretty low blow, and I think a lot of the comments that have come out of it have been the fact that Nike have invested a huge amount of money into Tiger Woods as a brand, and they need to get the ball rolling again in terms of getting the money back in terms of what they've put in into him.
And Nikki, in terms of a marketing perspective, do you think it worked at all for Nike?
You can understand, you can almost see the strategy when you look at the spot, because here's a brand that stands for authenticity and has authentically stood by Tiger and stated that they're going to stand by Tiger through this time. I almost feel like it's a case of trying too hard. You sit back and you say, what could be more authentic than getting his father involved or the father's voice? But in the final execution, you've got to stand back and say, do you really think it was authentic? And I think that's where they've left themselves down. It's almost, it's trying too hard and people see through that. And I think when you've got a very clear objective, sometimes you've got to be careful that you don't try too hard.
Yeah. Well, Theo, do you think the brands should be taking a moral high ground on things like this?
Look, I mean, I've never seen a situation like this before, so I don't think the world has. So I'm not sure how to judge it. I think Nikki's point is completely valid.
Trying too hard is definitely there.
Trying too hard. I can see the intent. I can definitely see the intent, and I can see the brief, and I can see what they wanted to do. So big tick in terms of we've stood by Tiger through this really difficult period. I think the execution has let them down really badly. I think if they'd executed it well, they would have. I think they would have done wonders for the brand, but unfortunately I don't think they pulled the execution off as well as they should have.
A long time ago, the world as we know it was one continent, Pangaea. 200 million years later, KFC has created their own piece of history and geography, Fangaea. Nikki, you're going to explain what Fangaea is all about.
Penny, it goes back to a brief that we put to the agency where we said, you know, KFC is South Africa's favourite fast food brand, and in fact the world's favourite chicken fast food outlet. And the big secret behind that is our secret recipe that makes us universally loved. And the challenge to the agency was, how do you take this positioning of being universally loved and put it into the sporting environment? Because the sporting environment is sort of characterized by competition and differences of opinion and, you know, some of the best dinner party fights that you could ask for.
And the best conversations,
Absolutely. So the challenge to the agency was, how do we take this unifying brand and put it in this divisive sort of media context called sport and come up with a positioning that's true to the brand? And the agency came back and said, well, KFC is Fangaea. You know, it's about bringing people together and fans of the brand together.
Yeah. And you think you did that effectively?
We've only just kicked the campaign off, so the early launch ideas of the campaign have sort of snuck out. We've started with the IPL, which has been
that's huge, isn't it? Yeah.
And it's actually fantastic, because the IPL is where you sit there and you suddenly see your hero Graham Smith playing alongside the villain, you know, from your Australian counterpart, and they're suddenly in the same team. So it's a classic example of where we've taken people from different countries and suddenly said, hang on, now you're part of the same team, and this is where you leave your differences at the door and you come together. Yeah. So we've kicked off with the IPL, and what we're trying to engender with consumers is that when they're good times and when fans are getting together, KFC is the complement to that.
Yeah. Well, Theo, how exactly can brands give back to society?
Well, obviously, I don't know if you're going to refer back to the pothole situation, or if you want to handle that separately. But yeah, I think that is very different to the advertising that you're talking about.
Just before you carry on, let's just explain this pothole thing. It's how KFC is getting involved with the infrastructure in Johannesburg, for example.
Yes, perhaps to say where it came from, as we got this Fangaea idea, one of the things we sat back and said is, what are ways that we can make things better for fans? Because that's what KFC is about. It's taking those moments and making them better. So we had some ideas when we were running competitions with giving away big screen TVs. But when somebody raised a hand and said, gee, the one thing, just fix some potholes for me. It's something that's annoying all of us at the moment. And we said, fine, let's make that as part of the campaign. And then there came the request in the newspaper from City of Johannesburg saying, corporates, calling on corporates to support. So we said, fantastic, as part of this Fangaea campaign, let's make a donation towards potholes in Johannesburg.
What do you make of this strategy, Theo?
I think it's fantastic. I certainly don't want to take any attention away from KFC, but if you look at the success of Outsurance and their Pointsman project, how well that's worked. And I think this is what KFC are doing is absolutely awesome. I think brands do have to give back more than just advertising, and this is a great example. And I think more and more clients are starting to do that. I mean, we had a client workshop with one of our top clients yesterday, and giving back to community is very much an important part of the strategy and the advertising strategy going forward. So I do think it's fantastic.
When you look at the trends in the past, did you see brands doing that where they give back to society?
They have in the past, but I think brands and clients are way more conscious about it now than they've ever been before.
Yeah, so what changed exactly, Nikki?
I think the consumers changed.
Okay.
So consumers are more and more judging corporations they want to work for and brands that they use, not just in terms of what they're telling them and what the product features and benefits are, but in terms of what the brand stands for and what it does in community. So I think consumers are demanding it from brands, and brands are responding to that. So it's interesting because you respond in different ways. KFC have our corporate social investment structure, which is around feeding. So it's about being the defining global company that feeds the world, and it's add hope and hunger to hope. This is also in terms of a brand campaign, because I think what we're starting to see is even in your traditional marketing spend, consumers are wanting to see authenticity, and they're judging brands and they're getting positionings through what you do, not just through what you say. And if in a campaign you can cobble together different things that you do, as well as saying different things, it builds a far more authentic story. And
So
do you think that this has set a precedent for other brands going forward?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. That's exactly what I was saying just now. I mean, through strategy sessions with our clients, they're raising this more and more, and it's becoming part of their advertising strategy. So no longer is it just about producing a print commercial or a television commercial or print ad. It's going into what else can we add, where can we add value, and what else can we do in terms of giving back to community. So this is definitely a trend that's happening, and we can see it with our clients, and in terms of what's happening with KFC, the likes of Outsurance, etc.
And basically shows consumers the integrity of the brand going forward as well. What are the plans for KFC for the World Cup?
For the World Cup, well, KFC is not a sponsor of the World Cup, so we won't be changing any of our normal strategy. So we'll continue with our sports sponsorship in terms of Fangaea and what we're doing around there, but that's more generically linked to sport for the next 5 years for us. Behind the World Cup itself, we do have one property we're looking at with one of the players, but we haven't tightened that up yet.
Okay, so we'll hear more from you soon.
I thought Fangaea was very clever, because I thought without being a sponsor, it was maybe part of your strategy to include fans for World Cup without having to spend millions of rands of dollars. But I think it's perfect timing, Fangaea, for World Cup.
Yeah, like timing is everything as well, that's for sure,